The first thing you want to do when you see a graph on an AP Calculus question is to see what that is the graph of. And as we read down below here, what we have is the graph of the derivative of the function. So what we're looking at up top here is the graph of f prime of x. That tells us how to now read the graph. So as we look at this, we now know that what we're looking at is a derivative graph, and let's go see what they want us to do. So they tell us some information about horizontal tangent lines, but they want to know in the end, when does f, the original function, have a relative maximum? And so what we need to do is we need to read our first derivative data off of this graph and see what provides us an actual relative max. To read a derivative graph, what you want to understand is that anywhere the graph is up above the x-axis, that's where your derivative would have a positive value, and that tells you where your original graph is increasing. Wherever your graph is down below in the negative space right here, that's where you would have a negative derivative value, and that tells you where the original graph is decreasing. And anywhere it hits on the axis right here, that's where our derivative would equal 0, and that tells us where we've got a horizontal tangent line going on. These are also where we would find what most people refer to as critical values. I always tell people, you can get really good at reading derivative graphs, but, you're just going to be fighting your brain most of the time if you don't just pull the data off of there. Your brain wants to read any graph it sees as the original function, and test brain is even worse. So what I always tell people is just take 2 seconds to pull this derivative data off and put it on a number line like you would if you were doing a first derivative test by hand. So the first thing that I do with my number line is I come through and I mark where my critical values are. So critical values are wherever we would hit this 0 right here, wherever we hit the x-axis. So I know that I've got a critical value happening here at -2. I know I've got a critical value happening here at 1. And then I know that I have a critical value happening down here at 4. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start reading off my first derivative data in each of those regions. Again, just like you would do on a first derivative test by hand. So to the left of -2, I can see that my graph is entirely up here in the positive space. So that tells me I have a positive graph, and that means it's increasing. And I always draw the arrows. I'm going to tell you drawing those arrows is going to save you more times than you'll be able to count. Then in between -2 and 1, I can see that my graph dips down into the negative spot here. So this would be negative and decreasing. Then between 1 and 4, it actually stays down in the negative. So all that section is still down in the negative space. So that is negative and still decreasing across there. And then after that, after 4, after my last critical value, I'm back up into the positive here. That's a positive first derivative, and there's where my graph is increasing. From here, you can sort of start reading off the shape of the graph. You can see your graph is going to go up and then down there. Then it's going to go down into down, and then over here it would go down into up. So reading that data becomes a heck of a lot easier when you're not trying to fight your brain. So what you can see is that you've got a max happening at this critical value. Negative into negative or positive into positive would be nothing. Nothing's going on there. And then this critical value decreasing into increasing, that gives us this little valley here, and that's where you would find a min. This question wanted to know specifically where we would find a maximum, so we can see that we would find a relative maximum at this critical point here, -2, so your answer would have been C. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, please click that like button and subscribe, and also share it with your friends and anyone else you know who might be crying about an upcoming AP Calc test. You can find more videos from me, more sample AP Calc questions, and my complete AP Calc study guide over at my website, apcalcprep.com. Have a great one.